Okay, it's 11 o'clock. We'll get started. For those of you that came on time, we appreciate you being here. We'll go through some introductions, but I'm Kendall Langseth, one of the ditch viewers. I get the opportunity to present the presentation. We got about a roughly 45-minute presentation, depending on how long-winded I am. It's kind of like my minister says, I'll do a half-hour sermon and 45 minutes later we're still listening. But no, it won't be that bad. But we're glad that you're here. Like I said, I want to do some introductions. We want to thank Commissioner Simonson and Veerkamp for being here from Brown County, and Commissioner Wakefield and Gribner from Redwood County. I don't know if they want to acknowledge themselves or not, but and then we got staff from both Brown and Redwood County, Gene Prokniak, the auditor treasurer, Andrew Lang, ditch inspector, and Andy Meyer from planning and zoning from Brown County, and Scott Wold and Brett Lang and Matt Mummy from the ditch department and environmental services in Redwood County. As I said, other ditch viewers that are here, Mark Behrens is in the back in the doorway ready to escape. He talked the first meeting, so you can take off if you want. John Thompson up here in front is one of the viewers. And as I said, I'm Kendall Langseth. Hopefully you're here for County Ditch 35. This is the second meeting for County Ditch 35, and I'll go through that in a little bit. But we are glad that you're here. We're going to look at County Ditch 35. Here's the ditch, the outline of the watershed in both Brown and Redwood counties, the various townships related to that. County Ditch 35 was established in 1957. There's a little over 7,000 acres in Redwood County, a little over 4,000 acres in Brown County, giving us a total of 11,361.16 acres that we looked at as far as establishing benefits. County Ditch 35 has not been redetermined since 1981, and we'll talk about why that's important in a little bit. County Ditch 30, JD 35, I keep mistaking with that, but it consists of both county tile and open ditch. There's 68,730 feet of tile in Redwood County, roughly 13 miles, 42,750 feet of tile in Brown County, roughly 8.1 miles, and there's 98,715 feet of open ditch in Redwood and Brown counties, which is roughly 18.7 miles. Those numbers are important as we get going, and I'll get through that, but this is one of the larger watershed areas with a lot of open ditch and a lot of tile, which hopefully is giving you a lot of benefits. But the established outlet of 35 is into branch 2 of Judicial Ditch 36 in the southwest quarter of section 30, Brookville Township in Redwood County, Minnesota. As we go through, we'll give you some of the recommendations that we're going to be given to the commissioners as far as grass strip and construction easement, but I'll go through those when we get a little bit later in the presentation. Just so you know, redeterminative benefits is an issue that comes up every once in a while. It's what we're doing is establishing your share of the repair cost related to the public drainage system of JD 35. What we do is we update the benefits and damages for the parcels within that watershed and within the drainage system. The end result that we're looking at, and when we get to that, is that we determine a percent that each parcel will pay for your future repairs and maintenance for the drainage system. We account for 100% of the acres that we've established in County JD 35, and we assign a percentage to each of those parcels of what they need to pay for any future repairs. This is the second of 3 meetings. The purpose of this meeting is we explain what we're doing, how the process goes, We're trying to give you as much information and being as open as possible of what and why we're going to be doing the redetermination. That's the information for us. The information from you that we really look forward to as well. We want to learn from you anything that is unique about your parcel or the whole ditch system that we may not have discovered yet as we're going through these parcels. As we're going through this, if something doesn't make sense to you, we'll have a question period, or we'll stick around afterwards to answer those questions and get that information from you. Obviously, tile installation has changed immensely since 1912, and even from 1950 when this one was established. Nobody believed that we'd have some of the equipment we have. If you had told them 100 years ago, the type of tiling equipment we had available to us today. These are the accredited viewers that worked on this system. There's 5 here. We have a group of about 7 that will work together, but these are the 5 that worked on 35. To give you an idea of our backgrounds, Bob is a working farmer. Bruce Ness is a farmer. We like the variety of people working on the system. Gives us a little different perspective for everybody on what's going. So it just gives you an idea how long we've been going at this. These are the counties that have worked in the past. I'll just give you an idea. We do hit basically South Central Minnesota. We just recently started working in Redwood County. We've been working in Brown County for a number of years. So we're looking forward to future work in Redwood County and working with them as well. This is just, I'm not going to read this. This should be on your sheet that you're looking at. I just want to remind you, we are all accredited drainage ditch viewers. We go to some trainings during the course of the year to maintain that accreditation. We look at each ditch and try to be as unbiased as we can. We don't have any teeth in the system, basically. So we look at trying to be as fair as we can. The viewing process, again, a little bit of information on that. We do go about the viewing process in a wide range of ways. We do physically look at the ditch and take pictures about the ditch. We'll give it as if we need to go out in 4-wheelers, we will. It isn't very often that we need to do that, but we use the computer system and the maps and the information on the computer a lot. We use USDA web soil survey to determine a couple of things that we look at. So we utilize the computer a lot. So we're in the office along with being out in the field looking at the system. This is just an overview of determining benefits and things that we look at. There's a number of things that we feel comfortable with, but these are the things that we want to make you as comfortable with as possible. I'm looking at this. This is an example of JD30. No, this is a sample watershed that we put together to give an example. The map that you have is very similar. The county open ditch is a solid red line. County tile is the dotted lines. Looking at the ditch watershed. What we do is, our purpose again is to determine the benefits from drainage in that system. The 4 main things that we look at with that are the benefits from drainage, are the acres that are in the watershed, and the number of acres you have in that watershed and in the parcels that you have. The soil types that you have on there will also determine part of your benefits. The location rate, and I'll explain that, but basically how easy it is for you to access a public drainage system and looking at the location rate. And then if there's any public tile on your farm. Those are 4 main criteria that we use to establish your benefit levels. Just going through that, the county does manage the finances. They run the checkbook. Again, to remind you, it's your public drainage system. It's your watershed. It's not theirs. but somebody needs to manage it, so the county manages the finances. The county also oversees the repairs. If you have any repair issues in Redwood or Brown County, both of them have drainage staff that will help you take care of that. The other two things that we look at in this process are damages. The damages that will be incurred because of the redetermination and because the ditch is there. We'll be looking at a grass strip and the right of way for a grass strip. And then we'll also be looking at construction easement, and I'll explain all of these in a lot more detail as we go. Okay, again, this is your watershed. As we go through this, landowners that benefit from the county open ditch and county tile system all help pay for the repair and maintenance of the county system. Whether it's a small blowout like this, or whether it's some ditch slide like was in the previous slide. Again, just to review that, the four things that determine your total benefits are your acres within the watershed area, your distance away from the county open ditch or county tile, the soil type, and if you have any county tile on your property. Looking at the benefit acres, this is how we determine the benefited acres. As we're going through this by state law, we need to look at each parcel or each piece in a 40 acres or less situation. So if you have 160 acres that you own, you're going to have 4 parcels that we'll look at and divide out. If you just have a 10-acre parcel, we'll just look at that. But looking at this specifically, looking at this parcel here, right here, it's a 40-acre parcel. Looking at this section, 40 it's 40 acre zone. What we're looking at as far as benefited acres, we take off the acre and a half, we take off road, we take off the open ditch. There's a couple other things that we make adjustments for, but in this case, we take off an acre and a half for the road that's along there. The road authority is the one that's going to be responsible for the benefits for the road, not you as a landowner, because you don't financially benefit directly from the road. So in this case, there's 38.5 acres that have been benefited. In this case, we're along the border of the watershed. Looking at this one specifically, looking at it again, it's a 40 acres its own. There's 8 acres. We'll measure digitally usually and look at that. There's 8 acres. It's out of the watershed. The yellow portion is what's in the watershed. We measured there's 32 acres in the watershed. Again, the road is along the south side there. We take off the acre and a half for the road. So the 32 minus 1.5 is 30.5 acres in that parcel are benefited. So if you live, keep that in mind, if you live along the border, make sure that you let us know. The one question we have with that as we're looking at this is, as you're looking at your map, does that line make sense to you? And it's a regular occurrence, so we look at that and we look at people that are in those situations. And if for some reason they don't think that's right, we'll look at it, we'll talk to the engineer or whoever drew the watershed line and make sure that we're all comfortable with where that line is. So that's how we look at the benefited acres in each individual parcel. Again, I mentioned the road is taken off. Also, the acres of the open ditch, if you have an open ditch in your parcel, are subtracted from your benefited acres because you do not benefit. Those were purchased or those were, the easement for those were taken when the ditch was installed. Okay. The other thing that we look at is we're looking at the number of benefited acres. Obviously, there's going to be other watersheds around, but when we're doing that, as we're looking at those bordered areas, we want to make sure that you aren't getting double assessed or over or under assessed for those acres. If you own 40 acres, your water goes somewhere, and we need to determine whether it goes into, in this case, JD 35, or whether it goes into the surrounding watersheds. In this case, you've got JD 12. It's in the process of being determined. JD County Ditch 101, 72, 38, and 49. What we do is we look at each of if these have been redetermined recently. And what we'll do here along JD 12 is we're in the process of helping with that redetermination. We'll look at each is we'll look at that 40 acres. We'll make sure that if there's 40 acres there, after taking off for the road, we'll make sure that, in this case, it looks like roughly 38 acres will be going to 35, and a couple acres will be going to 12. And we'll make sure that there's not more than or less than 40 acres that have been assigned to one of the dip systems or watershed systems. Okay, and this is basically just going through that again, or going through how we make adjustments related to the border. We look at also acres tiled out or tiled into the system. When we look at this, looking at this 40 here, it's along the border, it's on the border. Looking at it, and we just talked with Willis a few minutes ago about that situation for him, is that does it make more sense for you to tile this way out of the system, or does it make more sense to tile into the system? And we'll look at into the system in the next slide. But in this case, he's determined because of the lay of the land, because of whatever management reasons he wants to, that he's tiling out of the system. What we do is we look at that, we look at the number of acres that are in the watershed, the number of acres that are out of the watershed, determine how much is tiled out. And what we'll do is we'll adjust, if you're tiled out of the system, we start at 50%, and if we take 50% of your benefits off if you're tiled out of the system. And there may be some circumstances where we can adjust, we need to adjust that 50%. For example, if there's a low place here that you physically have drained away, and it's all going that way, we'll lower that number because we use the 50% number because we look at 50% of the surface, 50% of it is surface water, 50% of it is subsurface water. So your surface water is still going to stay in the system, and your subsurface water is going to be tiled out. So that's why we start at 50% and adjust from there. Looking at the same situation, if you're tiled in, if it goes that way, we'll do the same thing. We'll start at 50%. The acres that are tiled in will assess into the system at 50% benefit. And then those acres, again, if you're on the border and the other acres are being redetermined, we'll adjust the benefits on the adjoining watershed and take that benefit off of those acres because they've been assigned to this. So we do what we can to make sure that there's consistency and you're not being over or under assessed. This is an example, actual physical example of a system that we've worked on. Looking at this watershed line, you can see the pattern tiling. Just made sense to tile everything coming into 13. So we took these acres that were in 44, assignment of 50% to 13, took off that 50% off of 44 so that you wouldn't be over assessed. So if you have situations like that where you have some pattern tiling or some tiling where you're in or out, let us know and we'll make the adjustments as needed. This is important because we're looking at that we want to make sure we get it right because there are statutes in place that if you are unauthorized drainage into a drainage system is illegal. And if you haven't gotten approval, if you haven't gotten the okay to do that, your outlet to wherever you're draining to can be cut off. And there are some penalties to go along with that. So it's important that you get the information right, and we get the information right as far as where your water is going and how it's getting there. And this is what, after the redetermination is complete, you cannot tile from outside the watershed into the county system without for petitioning into the system. And then there usually is a cost involved with that and a benefit fee that's assessed to that. And any parcel that has benefits in the county system has a right to use the system on those benefited acres. So it is an important piece as we're looking at tiling in and tiling out. The third one that we look at as far as your benefit level is the location rate that I indicated to you. The location rate is basically a definition that we use for how far you are away from the public drainage system. In this case, what we do, looking at this one, is if there's an open ditch in the situation, we consider that as 100% as far as location. Whatever benefit value we come up with, we'll multiply that by 100% because we figure you have the best access to the public drainage system as anybody. So use the ditch as our starting point, 100%. And then what we look at is we realize that the farther away you are from that ditch, a little bit more difficult it's going to be for you to utilize the public drainage system. So every 40 away from whether it's tile or whether it's a ditch, we reduce the location rate by 90%, or by 10%, excuse me. So right here he's on the ditch, it's 100%. The next 40 over, it's 90%. You're looking at this and say, why isn't 80%? We also realize that if you have an impediment, which the road would be to utilizing that public drainage system, that you're going to have to do some either extra expense or a little more difficult to get there. So if there's an impediment, which is mainly roads, we reduce it an additional 10%. So in this case, we go from 90 to 70. Looking at tile systems, we start at 90% rather than 100% if there's public tile through your parcel. We realize that tile is not as efficient with moving water as public as a ditch is. So we start at 90% and then go the same 10% each 40 away from public tile. Okay, one of the key factors, the largest factors that we look at as far as benefit values is looking at the soil type on the parcel that you have. We classify soils into 4 different categories. If you ever looked at a soil map done by USDA Soil Survey, in the last, I think there's roughly 80 different soil types that have been, 80 to 100 different soil types that have been identified in Redwood and Brown counties. But we take one of those soil types, determine whether it's A, B, C, or D soils, and then we assign a benefit value to that soil type. But this is how we categorize the soil types. A is that soil that's frequently flooded, and this is we're utilizing what it was pre-existing prior to drainage, any public drainage that was there. So, but basically A is that any land that would be frequently flooded, cattails and muck and stuff related to the water and the drainage needs to occur. B soils are those areas that are occasionally flooded, and I'll go into a little more examples or show some examples of each of these in a second. But it's occasionally flooded, pasture ground, 0 to 2% slopes. Looking at C soils, it does probably have a wet subsoil, but it's a little more of the side slopes, 2 to 6% slope. Doesn't need as much public or artificial drainage to get a good crop. D would be more of the upland areas, that's 6% slopes or more. Doesn't really need a lot of artificial drainage to grow a good crop, but a little bit of drainage will, public drainage or assisted drainage would be helpful. This is just an example, one pit of all 4 soil types on one picture. Again, the A soil types are down at the bottom here. It's definitely open water, but more looking like here with cattails and stuff. B ground here, probably most realistically when this was first farmed, they might have got some pasture or maybe some hay off of that occasionally. C ground is a little more upland, has some decent drainage. And the D ground here with a little bit more slopes and doesn't need drainage in order to grow a good crop. Just a couple more examples. Again, before drainage, a lot of cattails. After drainage, it does grow a good crop. It may have some limitations depending upon the type of year, but it does grow a good crop if it's properly managed and there is some public and some drainage available. B soils, again, occasionally flooded, pasture ground, 0 to 2% slope, does have a good crop capacity after having some drainage installed. C, again, a little bit more rolling, doesn't need as much public or as much drainage, will have a good crop after drainage. And D soils really doesn't need any artificial drainage. Probably the most realistic place would be along the side hills or up and down the drainage or waterway. Just get some of that side hill slope drained and that side hill seepage taken care of. The other thing we also realized looking at the benefits today is there is some tiling done on deep ground. This is a Mark was out driving around with his wife and he noticed this, and his wife didn't understand why he needed to stop and take a picture of that. But you don't see many pictures of deep ground being tiled, but this definitely looks at that. Oops. Mark goes by that too fast to get any reaction. Some of the other categories that we look at and make adjustments for related to your benefits is that you're looking at permanent wetlands. There may, whether it's WRP, CREP, RIM, those are permanent programs. We used to be able to get that information from FSA or the office, but with all the privacy rules in place, we don't always have access to that information. So if you have some permanent assessments of permanent wetlands, let us know and we'll make adjustments accordingly. Basically, we only assess those at 10% of your benefit value, just because, and the main reason we use 10% is you needed to have it needed to be in crop at some time in order to get into those programs. One of the other categories that we don't have access to, or we can't see, usually see physically unless we're there at exactly the right time, is farmable wetlands. It's an RCS designation. If you have some farmable wetlands, we understand that you have some limitations as far as any drainage you can do there, so we'll make adjustments there. Acres that have never been farmed. Like all of us know places where, for whatever reason, that acre, that 2 acres, 5 acres just doesn't make sense to farm, so I farm around it or do whatever. We'll look at those and take those into account. Again, non-benefited acres, we have some categories that we look at that. As I indicated, the roads, we take those off of your parcel, and that benefit value is assigned to the road authority. Building sites are assessed differently. Again, we use the average of AB or average of BCD times 1.5, so they're assessed a little bit more because we realize with the hard surfaces, the water is going to run off a little bit faster and put a little more pressure on the public drainage system. So we look at those differently. Trees have a 0 benefit value. We look at trees as actually potentially being beneficial to the system because they slow down the water getting to the public drainage system and actually may assist as far as keeping water and moving water and transpiration of water into the atmosphere. So look at that. Just example, again, farmable wetland that we can't identify without your assistance. That pothole or piece that you can never farm. These are some of the non-benefited acres. Obviously, if you look at that, I'm not sure what the price of corn would have to be to put any value or even think about farming that. So we look at those and make adjustments if we see those. The road benefits, some people, why do roads benefit? This is actually an example that we have. We can see there's plenty of water there and it needs to get away. It was a couple of years ago, Mark and one of the other viewers was going over to Blue Earth for a meeting, and while they were on the way, they were plowing in an 8-inch tile right along the road that was going to access some public drainage. So they do definitely benefit from the public drainage system. Building sites benefit, these are just justification, whatever, for doing that. None of us like to have water in our basement. If we can do something to alleviate that, an inch of water in a basement can be very detrimental to a lot of situations. Okay, county tile benefits. Looking at this, looking at this 40 acres, there wouldn't be any county tile benefit there because there's obviously no county tile in there. Looking at this, we'll measure the length of the county tile system. This 40 acres has roughly 1,400 feet of county tile. We realize there isn't a lot of benefit to the county tile related to, taking some additional water and stuff, but we know that there's a little bit of benefit for you as far as access to it and being able to get there. We just, we assess $1 a foot for that tile. So in this case, we'd add $1,400 of tile benefit to this parcel. And I'll get to an example of how we add all these numbers up so you can see where that is important in a minute. The place we will make adjustments for situations like this, we realize that there's a kind of a congregation of tile coming together there. There's probably just as much likelihood because all those tile coming together all at once with a large rain, it actually may come up the tile rather than draining down. And if you can indicate to us that you have an area like that where the drainage is especially slow or even it's backing up and causing some damage to your crop that is actually hindering your profitability, we'll look at that. And we may take, we will, if we can determine what that is, we will adjust the tile benefit for that parcel. So let us know if you have a situation like that where it's backing up. As an example along a drainage ditch of what I was talking about, looking at this, apparently it is fairly flat along here. When there's a heavy rain or on a regular basis, the ditch backs up, causes damage to the crop. We'll look at those acres, make adjustments on your benefited acres related to that because of the crop damage that you have occurring on your parcel. And that's basically what we look at as well on the tile. Okay, how do we put all that together? We're looking at this parcel breakdown. Looking at this, it's a 40-acre parcel minus an acre for a road. Most of the gravel roads are roughly an acre alongside of it. So in this case, we have 39 acres benefited. As I indicated, we have 1.6 acres of tree. That benefit value is 0, as I indicated. Looking at the 1.1 acres of building site, that benefit value based on benefits that are assigned to the soil types is 1,336 acres or dollars. In this case, there's 2.2 acres of A soil. Each of these soil types, we assign a benefit value, and we multiply that benefit value times, and if you have per acre, the benefit value times the number of acres comes up with almost $8,000. Looking at the B soil, so 6.8 acres of B soil, 21.7 acres of C soil, 5.6 acres of B soil. If we add all those up, we come up with the total benefit value for that parcel of $54,101. So if you got your spreadsheet and you saw that benefit value on your parcel and you think, what the, I can't afford that. Just remember, that's not something you'll ever have to pay. What that is the benefits over a 25-year period. By state law, we have to do that, assign the benefits over a 25-year period. So that number is over a 25. If you divide that number by 25 and by the number of acres, you'll look at it, and that's what the benefits you should benefit, roughly how much you benefit from, what we have determined you benefit from having that public drainage system access to your parcel. So and if you do that, if you divide that out, it makes a lot more sense on a per year basis. In this case, we multiply by the location rate, which is 80%. So it's either two 40s away from a ditch or one away from a tile. So it's 80%. So your total benefits on this parcel is $43,281. Again, a reminder, you don't ever pay that. Well, we use that number to come up with total benefits for the watershed, and then use that number to determine what your percent of benefits is. And I'll reiterate that in a second. Okay, this is a parcel breakdown if there's a county tile system. Basically, all the information is the same, except this case, since there is a county tile going through it, we multiply by the 90% Instead of 80% for the benefit value is $48,691, plus the county title benefit of $1,400 gives the total benefits for this parcel of $50,091. Okay, how do we determine those benefit values for A, B, C, and D soils? We look at a 3-year county average for corn yield and bean yield. We look at a county average for CER rating. We look at a township average for CER rating. And then we look at the average sale price for corn and beans over a 3-year period. And then we use input costs at this point in time from University of Minnesota FinBin program. It's a record, if you aren't familiar with that, it's a record keeping system that's coordinated through the University of Minnesota with, I'm not sure how many thousands of farmers that are involved with that, but each county has, or each area of the state has a number of those. But we use those input costs. As I indicated before, a couple of guys are active farmers. We have them review those numbers, see if they make sense to them or not, and we go from there. So those are the factors that we use when it comes to determining benefit values. We try to use as unbiased of information and average information as we can. Again, the input costs are the actual costs that farmers are reporting. The average sale price is based on some information we look at online usually. Okay, that's how we determine what the benefits are. The other issue that we have on JD 35 is there is a county ditch, and a law from 1977 indicates whenever there's a redetermination done, and this potentially could have been done in 81, but they didn't. But in 1977, anytime there's a redetermination, a 16.5-foot wide buffer needs to be established and paid for by the ditch system. So this is what we're looking at is we've got the open ditch, and then we've got a grass strip easement that is 16.5 feet along from the berm of the ditch out 16.5 feet. That grass strip, we have, depending upon the criteria, we pay it 100%, 50%, or 10%. In this case, we're looking at 100% and 10%. 100% is if it's actually cropland. 50% if there's some mitigating factors, and I won't get into those because it doesn't apply here. And looking at 10%. If it's non-benefited acres or acres through a building site, we only pay the grass strip at 10%. Mainly looking at the building site specifically, we know that the reason for the grass strip is access to the ditch and repair of the ditch, and the drainage authorities to get out there and look at it. They're not going to use your building site for access to the ditch as far as making repairs, unless it's absolutely necessary. They usually use the other side of the ditch. So we pay those at 10% or 100% or 10%. That's that 16.5-foot easement. The other thing we look at is some counties establish a 100-foot right-of-way easement along the ditch. That 100-foot easement starts at the middle of the ditch. The width of the ditch, we take that off because they got paid for before, whenever the ditch was installed. You're going to get paid for that 16.5-foot easement now. So we take that off. So we're looking at, depending upon the ditch, 50, 60 feet of right-of-way easement here that gives the drainage authority, the drainage authority is paying to make sure that they have access and a place to work as far as any repairs that need to be to the ditch. The issue with that, we recommend that being paid at a 5% rate. There is a difference between Brown County and Redwood County. Redwood County has decided that they won't pay for that 5%, that construction easement. Brown County will pay for that construction easement. When we look at the total numbers, and I'll go through that again, but because Redwood County doesn't pay for that, it was determined that it's not fair for them to help pay for that. If you're in Redwood County, to help pay for the construction easement in Brown County. So any construction easement damages will only be paid by those in Brown County. And I'll review that when we look at your sheet. So that's how we establish the grass strip easement and the construction easement, and those are damages that will be paid to those along the ditch. Just another example of that. Okay, I just went through this, but the easement will not be established in River County, so we won't pay for it. Okay, just some examples here. Looking at this, the grass strip easement, because it's cropland right along the ditch, the easement will be paid at 100%. Looking at that, looking at this situation, the cropland here on this side will be paid at 100%. Grass strip easement on this side will be paid at 10% because it's not being utilized for cropland from the peak berm to the road easement. So that will be only paid at 10%. Looking at this, because the ditch is right, basically in the ditch, there's no easement paid because this is the road right away. So there's no easement paid there. This actually is a drainage ditch, but because it isn't obviously cropland, it'll only be paid at 10%. That was probably the main one. Because pastures utilized differently, that's usually what's paid at 50%. That's the main category that we paid 50% at. Looking at it, that 16.5 feet always needs to be accessible to the ditch authority. So this fence needs to be moved back 16.5 feet so that there's 16.5 feet available to the ditch authority to do repairs and to look at the ditch and make sure the ditch is accessible. Again, that side, grass or the cropland paid at 100%. Grass strip easement paid at 10% of land value because we know that they're in a normal situation, they're not going to be using the building site for repairs and stuff. We do not pay construction easement through a building site. Okay, for those of you who may have a CRP program and put that buffer strip in under a CRP program, in the present situation, you'll continue to receive that CRP payment. This one-time 16.5 foot buffer strip payment just basically goes on top of that CRP payment. So you won't get penalized on your CRP side, CRP side, but you will still get paid for that grass strip. So we need to know whether or not that's CRP. It's just not something that you wanted to do, so that we get you paid at the correct rate. Okay, and without all the adjoining stuff, good example of the filter strip. Again, another example, and the fence needs to be moved back 16.5 feet. Obviously, he's not going to be happy, but it needs to be done. Same thing, fence needs to be moved back. Here, the same picture, the fence was moved back 16.5 feet. One of the questions in the previous session was, what can we do with that grass strip? The main criteria for the grass strip is you cannot make a road out of it or utilize it in a way that it becomes a road. It has to maintain the grass cover, the vegetative cover in order to be maintained. If not, you'll be asked to reestablish the grass strip along the ditch. So obviously, if you're failing it a couple times a year, that's fine. It's still your land. You're just gotten damages and an easement for it. So you can hay it, you can hunt on it. The perception is that anybody can go on it. No, it's still private land. You still have control on it, and just because it was paid for by the watershed, that doesn't mean anybody can go out there. They still need permission. Okay, Minnesota statutes, as far as who can be on that 16.5 feet by state law, right away, the engineer's assistants, viewers assistants, they enter the property, making surveys and establish any needed. So, but those are usually established by the drainage authority to say it's okay. We're not going to be out there. This is our second meeting. We're basically ready for the public hearing. The only situation I can think of now where we as viewers would be out there is if you invited us out to look at something. So I wouldn't expect anybody to be out there, not even these guys. Again, I'll reiterate, you can drive on the 16.5 feet, but you can turn around on it. You can use it as end rows, but you cannot make a road out of it. In this example, it would not be allowed. Okay, so you've got all that information. This is what we end up with. Looking at this, this is an example of the spreadsheet that you received in the mail. You should have everything there. There's 2 slides of this, so you don't see all of the numbers on here. There's on the next slide. But in this case, on your spreadsheet, you'll have a description of your property, whether in this case, you'll be a name, your name and stuff, the description of the property, the northwest quarter, how many deeded acres, how many benefited acres. In this case, there's 11,361.16 acres in the total watershed. We'll also have the amount benefited for that parcel. So you should have an amount benefited on the next space. Looking at your the total, oh, I forgot to do that. I'll get to that in a second, but looking at that amount benefited, that's the total of every single parcel, whole 11,000 acres plus acres. That's the benefit value that we came up with. Then we'll have the percent of total benefits for that parcel. In this case, it is 0.3414%. Looking at that, how we get that number is you take the amount benefited divided by the total benefited, and that's, I haven't checked Mark's numbers, but the computer did it, so I assume it's right. Come up with that 0.3414%. Obviously, looking at total benefits, if you get a bill for the repair, 100% of it has to be paid, so the total percent benefits adds up to 100%. Okay, looking at the right-of-way grass strip easement, looking at cropland for 100%, this particular parcel has 1 acre. There's a total of 63.14 acres in this watershed of 100% cropland. That cropland, the way we valued that, it's based on sales value from the assessor's office in Brown and Redwood County. And what we utilize is the CER value from, that's going back to that one slide, the CER value for each of the individual townships and the 2 counties. Looking at Brown and Redwood, the value for CER for 2020 was $94.50. Looking at the average CER value for Brookville, Charleston, Sundown, Willow Lake, and North Star townships is 70.4. So if we multiply the 94.5 times the 70.4, we come up with a cropland value of $6,653. So that's what we used here for that 1 acre. The 1 acre of $6,653. So when we look at that, the cropland grass strip right away, we use that $6,653 times the 63 acres, gives us the total damages that the watershed's going to have to pay is $420,070, which I'll be honest is one of the largest amounts that we've seen in a watershed district. You have a lot of ditch and a lot of acres, so there is a big assessment coming for that. Looking at that as well, we're going to have grass strip total damages here, 420,000. Looking at the right-of-way for the grass strip easement, we have trees and benefits of 10%. This protected parcel has 1 acre, 3.46 acres is all in the total watershed. Multiplied by that 10% times this 6,653, $665 an acre. So the total damages for the watershed for this particular is $2,301. Keeping going, the pasture grass strip, a little bit that there is, Again, there's 1.59 acres of grass strip at 50%, so that was valued at $3,372, excuse me, $3,327. The trees and building sites and non-benefited grass strip right away at 10% is, on the previous slide, $665. So the total grass strip easement, if we add all of these up, the right-of-way easement acres, it's $427,661. The damages for purchasing the construction right-of-way was $18,665, which gives us a total damages assessed to the watershed of $446,326. As I indicated before, Brown County is the only one that is going to help pay for that $18,000. So if, in this case, the zero is here. Apparently this parcel's in Redwood County, so there isn't any assessment for that. So the assessment to Brown County will be additional. They'll be assessed $18,000. They'll help pay for both Brown and Redwood will help pay for $427,000. Again, the total easement damages for the system is $446,000. So this line is your individual cost for your particular parcel. This is the total for the whole system. So in this case, the grass strip easement for this farm is $1,460. You may review any of that. Okay, so at some time in the, Gene, do you want to go through when, so the landowner, this particular landowner will get a check for $1,460. You want to go through when that would occur, Gene?
Sure, I'll try my best. Basically, there's one more meeting after this public hearing. You'll all get an invitation to that meeting as well. And the board will hopefully approve the redetermination of benefits. Landowners have a 30-day appeal period. And after that, we would look at cutting the checks to the individual landowners based on what the redetermination has stated. And so I would say, you know, within 2 months after the public hearing, you probably would see payment for that.
And at the previous meeting, Scott's out, but Redwood County was a very similar situation.
Right.
So, okay, so in this case, this particular landowner will get a check for $1,460. He also will get an assessment of the assessment times at 0.3414. You'll get a bill for that.
Kendall, can I check something here as well?
Yeah.
When we mail our check to the landowners in Brown County, we also include the bill. So needless to say, if you know, you have sufficient funds that you've received from us, you can easily pay off your assessment or at least pay towards your assessment and refund it back. But we do issue a check and create a bill for the entire amount so that you can offset and see exactly how it affected you, and it's going to relate to what you see on your report in front of you.
Okay. Just so you realize that if you do have a payment coming from a ditch, you will get that check in total for whatever your damages are. But at the same time, you'll be getting the bill for your share of the total assessment. So you'll be getting a bill, you'll get a payment for the ditch. You'll also be getting a bill for the assessment for payment of that ditch. So you don't come, you help pay for part of the grass strip. You don't just get paid for that. So Okay, just a reminder, any assessments that are paid into the ditch, if you're paying assessments into the ditch, stay in that ditch account. It cannot be used anywhere else in the county. It's your ditch, it's your account. The county is just managing the money, looking at that. There is a situation where one county ditch flows into another county ditch. There may be outlet benefits. In this case, 35 does flow into 36. So whenever we haven't established what that outlet benefit will be yet, but there will be an outlet benefit that 36 pays to 35 pays to 36 for accessing that ditch. That ditch needs to be a little bit bigger because it needs to cleaned a little bit more often because there's a little bit more water going through. So that is yet to be established. And there's some pictures of the system. 35 goes into 36. The Google Earth pictures. That wasn't good. Fortunately, that wasn't on 35. But you guys live on 35, you see the pictures. I'll run through them fairly quick just so that this is what we were establishing our values on, is watching through this.
When this drainage ditch goes through a road, under a road, is it the drainage ditch responsibility to pay for that, putting in that culvert or that big, or is it divided between the, Department of Transportation and the drainage system?
Okay, I'll let the drainage people assess or address that one.
Any road crossing would be the road authority's responsibility. If it's the state, county, township, they would take care of that culvert or any repair and maintenance of that. Everything beyond that. But like on a private driveway crossing or a field crossing culvert, that would be the drainage system's responsibility.
I got some property in Redwood County. There's a bridge, or the bridge over the drainage ditch, and it's rated at only 20,000 pounds or something. So you can't actually go across it to get on the other side. And if I wouldn't have some friendly neighbors, I can't get over there. Now I've talked to people about doing something about that, but they seem like they don't get anything done, like purchasing some land to give me access to the 40 acres that are behind the drainage ditch.
Without going across that bridge.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Years ago, 20,000 pounds, a tractor and planter and everything can go across there. Nowadays, it don't work. Can't take a compound across it. So,
As far as, the place I'd start is the township officers, because I'm assuming it's probably a township road. And then I keep going up the ladder until I hopefully found somebody that would help assess that issue. It's the only suggestion I can give right now. But that is you're not the only one with that issue. I can tell you that. We run into that type of situation fairly regularly.
so that would actually be a disadvantage for assessment on the water on the back 40, because there wouldn't be no actually open road going back there to use that property. I thought the county has to furnish you an excess to get to your land, even if it's behind the drainage ditch or something.
You're above my pay grade on that one. You know, but, you know, I mean, unfortunately, your elected officials are the ones you're gonna have to start with. So your county, you know, whoever your county commissioner is, I definitely get him involved with discussions on that. Just keep going here. Going the right way. Okay, the grass strip does need to be maintained. This is the way Freeborn County assesses that situation. They put a 16.5-foot conduit on the front of a four-wheeler, with one end on the berm. If it starts hitting prep, they'll get a phone call or a letter from the ditch authority indicating they need to reestablish that 16.5-foot buffer and destroy any crop that's there. Okay, Gene indicated the next meeting, they said this is the second meeting. The next meeting will be a public hearing with the drainage authority. That date hasn't been established yet, so I can't give that to you. That public meeting is an open meeting. During that meeting, the road authority will open it up for public comment. They'll give you the opportunity to make any comments you may or may not, or you may have related to that. Our goal is to not have any questions come up because we've dealt with those issues before the meeting came up. That's our goal. Hopefully that works. If you have any questions, we'll be here again afterwards or after the meeting to answer those. But once that public comment period is closed, the Drainage Authority has three options related to the redetermination. They can either approve, table, or dismiss it. If it's approved, there's a 30-day comment period or appeal period that Gene indicated before. And unfortunately, in that appeal period, the first thing you need to do is hire a lawyer because there's a lot of legalese that goes into making that appeal. Once that appeal period is up, the numbers are in stone until the next redetermination. Could be 30, 40 years looking at this one. The last redetermination was in 81. So we looked at 40 years right now. We've got some ditches that we're working on that were established in 1915, 16 that are just getting redetermined for the second time. They've been over 100 years. With that, any questions, additional questions you may have?